I still remember the exact moment my world crumbled. I was sitting in the live-streamed investor meeting, 2 seats away from Hector, when he suddenly stood up with that fake smile I'd learned to hate. The camera was rolling, broadcasting to hundreds of potential investors. "I'm excited to announce that my fiancée, Arlette, will be taking over as our new head of operations," he said, gesturing toward her with pride. The words hit me like ice water. Arlette beamed, accepting applause from investors who didn't know she'd never run anything more complex than her Instagram account. My hands gripped the table so hard my knuckles went white. I'd built this entire supply chain from nothing. Every supplier, every contract, every system. It was all my work. But there I was, forced to smile and clap while my life's work got handed to someone who couldn't even spell logistics 6 months ago. Then Hector twisted the knife deeper. "Maddie will stay on as a consultant if she chooses." The way he said it, like he was doing me some huge favor, made my stomach turn. I didn't trust myself to speak. The meeting finally ended after what felt like hours. Investors filed out, shaking hands and making small talk about quarterly projections. I stayed frozen in my chair, watching Arlette accept congratulations like she'd actually earned something. Hector walked over with that patronizing smile he'd perfected. "It's nothing personal, Maddie. Arlette just gets it, you know?" He said it so casually, like he was talking about switching coffee brands instead of destroying my career. Arlette touched my shoulder with fake sympathy. "Thank you so much for building the perfect system for me to run. I promise I'll take good care of it." The way she said, "for me to run," made my blood boil. Like I'd been some kind of construction worker building her dream house. I couldn't speak. My legs felt shaky as I stood up and walked toward the door. Behind me, I heard Arlette giggling about something Hector whispered in her ear. I made it to the bathroom just in time to lock the door before breaking down completely. Then my phone buzzed. A text from our biggest supplier. "Is it true you're leaving? We only signed because of you." 2 years ago, everything was different. I remember working 70-hour weeks, living on coffee and determination. Hector's startup was dying when I joined. He had big ideas, but no clue how to make them real. That's where I came in. I spent months building relationships with small-town farmers who'd never worked with tech companies before. I convinced them to trust us, even when we could barely pay our own rent. I negotiated with logistics companies who thought we were just another failed startup. I designed systems that could handle everything from farm to customer's door. The breakthrough came when I landed Thompson Farms as our anchor supplier. They were skeptical at first, but I flew out to Iowa and spent 3 days learning their operation. I showed them how our platform could triple their reach without losing their family farm values. By the end of the week, they'd signed a 5-year exclusive contract. That deal changed everything. Other suppliers started calling us, investors took notice. Revenue jumped from nearly 0 to 6 figures in just 2 months. But even then, I heard Hector bragging to investors, "I designed the whole logistics system myself." I swallowed my anger and kept working. I should have seen the warning signs earlier. Back then, I was so loyal to Hector that I turned down an amazing offer from Megacorp Industries. They wanted me to head their entire West Coast supply chain division. The salary alone would have doubled what Hector was paying me. But when Hector found out about the offer, he practically begged me to stay. "Please don't leave me, Maddie. Help me make something great. We're building the future together." He made it sound like we were partners, like my success was his success. I even helped train Arlette when she started hanging around the office. She was just Hector's girlfriend then, with 0 business experience. But Hector insisted she sit in on meetings to learn how things work. I spent hours explaining basic concepts to her, thinking I was helping build a stronger team. "You're so smart, Maddie," she'd say with wide eyes. I could never understand all this complicated stuff. I actually felt protective of her back then. She seemed so innocent and eager to help. Looking back, I realize how perfectly they played me. In my memory, I reassured myself that Hector would do right by me when the time came. Now, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I whispered, "Never again." I splashed cold water on my face and forced myself to stop crying. My reflection looked like a stranger, pale, shocked, defeated. But as I stared into my own eyes, something shifted. The hurt was still there, but underneath it, something harder was growing. I walked back into the office with my head high. Arlette was sitting at what used to be my desk, already rearranging things. She looked up nervously as I approached. "Congratulations, Arlette," I said with a smile that felt like broken glass. "I know you'll do great things." The words tasted bitter, but I needed her to trust me. "Thank you so much, Maddie. I'm really nervous about taking over something so important." She actually looked relieved that I wasn't angry. "I hope we can still work together." "Of course," I replied smoothly. "I want to help however I can." But inside, everything had changed. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. And Hector had made one crucial mistake. He had no idea how much of his business depended on my personal relationships. My phone buzzed again. "Another supplier. If you're leaving, we're pulling out." For the first time that day, I smiled for real. 3 days later, I discovered just how deep the betrayal went. I was cleaning out my desk when I found a folder labeled "Patent Applications" that I'd never seen before. My hands shook as I opened it. There it was, a provisional patent for the logistics algorithm I'd designed, filed under Hector's name alone. My algorithm. My code. My innovation. But according to the paperwork, he was the sole inventor. I sat there staring at the documents, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. This wasn't just about giving my job to his fiancée. He'd been planning to steal my work all along. My first instinct was to storm into his office and confront him. I actually started walking toward his door, the patent papers clenched in my fist. But then I stopped. Getting angry wouldn't fix this. It would just give him a reason to fire me completely. Instead, I went back to my computer and started typing a resignation email. "Dear Hector, effective immediately." But halfway through, I deleted it all. No, I wasn't walking away empty-handed. If Hector wanted to play dirty, I'd show him just how dirty things could get. But I'd be smarter about it. I decided to play the perfect team player. When Hector introduced me to investors as their consulting expert, I smiled and nodded. When Arlette asked for my help understanding the supply chain software, I gladly explained everything, with a few creative adjustments. "The delivery windows are pretty flexible," I told her during our first training session. "Suppliers usually pad their estimates, so you can promise faster shipping than what they quote." It wasn't exactly a lie, but it wasn't the whole truth either. Arlette ate it up. "You make it sound so easy." I was worried this would be too complicated. She started taking notes furiously, writing down every exaggerated deadline I suggested. Within a week, she was confidently promising clients impossible delivery dates. I watched from my new consultant desk as she assured our biggest client that we could handle their holiday rush orders in half the normal time. The client was thrilled. "That's exactly what we need. When can you guarantee delivery?" Arlette looked at her notes and smiled brightly. 2 weeks. Guaranteed." I had to bite my tongue to keep from laughing. That order usually took 6 weeks minimum. While Arlette was making impossible promises, I started my own quiet campaign. I began reaching out to our suppliers, framing it as routine check-ins. "Hey Bill, just wanted to touch base before my role transitions. I told the owner of Thompson Farms, I want to make sure you're taken care of when I move on." "Move on? You're leaving?" Bill sounded genuinely upset. "Maddie, you're the only reason we signed with these people. Your word is the only thing we trust." Similar conversations happened with supplier after supplier. They all said the same thing. Their loyalty was to me, not to Hector's company. Most of them had never even met Hector. The owner of Pacific Logistics was particularly direct. "Look, I'll be honest with you. We've been thinking about expanding our consulting services. If you ever start your own firm, we'd love to work with you directly." That comment planted a seed in my mind. My own consulting firm? I'd built this entire network from scratch once. I could do it again. By the end of the week, I had informal interest from 12 suppliers. Not commitments, not yet, but something much more valuable. Options. Arlette's first major crisis hit exactly when I expected it would. The holiday rush orders she'd promised in 2 weeks were stuck in processing delays. The client was furious, threatening to cancel their contract and demand penalties. My phone rang at 2 a.m. Arlette was crying so hard I could barely understand her. "Maddie, I'm so sorry to call this late, but everything's falling apart. The shipments are delayed, and the client is talking about suing us. I don't know what to do. Her voice was shaking with panic. I rubbed my eyes and sat up in bed. Okay, take a deep breath. Tell me exactly what happened. For the next hour, I walked her through damage control. I called in favors with backup suppliers, rerouted shipments through premium carriers, and even convinced the client to accept a partial delivery with a small discount. By morning, we'd saved the contract. You're amazing, Maddie. I don't know how you fixed that so fast. Arlette sounded exhausted but grateful. What she didn't realize was that the whole crisis could have been avoided if she'd followed the actual delivery timelines instead of the inflated ones I'd suggested. The next day, I heard Hector yelling at her through his office door. Why can't you just do it like Maddie did? 2 weeks after my demotion, something unexpected happened. Marcus Webb, CEO of Megacorp Industries, called me directly. Maddie, I heard through the grapevine that your situation has changed. His smooth voice came through my phone. We'd like to discuss a consulting arrangement with you. I nearly dropped the phone. Megacorp was Hector's biggest competitor. I'm listening. We need someone with your expertise to optimize our supply chain operations. Full consulting contract, complete autonomy over your projects, and compensation that reflects your actual value. He paused. I think you'll find our offer very attractive. The terms he outlined were incredible. 3 times my current salary, equity options, and the freedom to work with my own supplier network. It was everything I'd dreamed of. This is a generous offer, Marcus, I said carefully. Let me think about it. Of course. Take your time. He sounded confident. Just remember, we value talent here. Real talent gets real recognition. As I hung up, I could hear Hector and Arlette arguing in his office again. She was crying, and he was frustrated. Their perfect partnership was already cracking. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Let me think about it, I whispered to myself. But I was already thinking much bigger than just taking another job. That weekend, I sat in my apartment with legal documents spread across my kitchen table. I was researching something that had been nagging at my mind: who actually owned the supplier relationships I'd built? The answer was better than I'd hoped. Since I'd negotiated most contracts under my personal name and built relationships through direct communication, there were no exclusivity clauses binding those suppliers to Hector's company. They were free to work with anyone they chose. More importantly, they wanted to work with me. I drafted my first consulting agreement with Thompson Farms. They'd been unhappy with some recent service issues and were eager to try a new approach. The contract was simple. They'd pay me directly for logistics consulting, and I'd help them find the best shipping solutions for their needs. When I called Bill Thompson to discuss it, he didn't hesitate. Maddie, we've been hoping you'd go independent. Frankly, we trust you more than your old company. When do we start? By Sunday night, I had my first signed contract. Hector's second biggest supplier was now working with me directly. And this was just the beginning. I looked at the signed papers and felt something I hadn't felt in weeks: hope. Monday morning, I decided to test something. I casually mentioned to Hector that our biggest competitor, Richmond Supply Co., was struggling with logistics issues. Really? Hector's eyes lit up with predatory interest. What kind of issues? Oh, just delivery delays, supplier problems. Nothing we couldn't handle easily, I said, watching his reaction. True to form, Hector's arrogance kicked in immediately. By that afternoon, he was cold calling Richmond's clients, offering to undercut their prices by 20%. It was exactly the kind of reckless move I'd expected. What Hector didn't realize was that undercutting by 20% would mean operating at a loss on those contracts. He was so focused on stealing business that he wasn't doing the math. Meanwhile, Arlette was trying to manage the operational side of these new commitments. I watched her frantically trying to figure out how to fulfill orders that were priced below cost. The stress was clearly getting to her. Maddie, can you help me understand these pricing sheets? She asked, looking overwhelmed. Some of these numbers don't seem right. I helped her just enough to avoid a complete disaster, but not enough to fix the underlying problem. Hector had committed to losing money on every order. The pressure finally got to Arlette during a board meeting with investors. I was sitting in the back as the consulting advisor when one investor asked about profit margins on the new Richmond clients. Arlette started explaining the contracts, but halfway through, she realized the math didn't work. Her voice got quieter and quieter as she tried to make sense of numbers that couldn't make sense. I need to double-check these figures, she said, her face turning red. Then, to my shock, she started crying right there in front of everyone. I'm sorry, she sobbed. I can't do this. I don't understand why nothing adds up. The room fell silent as investors watched Hector's carefully crafted image crumble. Hector looked mortified. Arlette, please, let's discuss this privately. But the damage was done. Investors were already whispering to each other. This is exactly what I was afraid of, he hissed at her as the meeting ended. You're making us look incompetent. He didn't care that people could hear him humiliating her. Later, Arlette approached me in the hallway, her eyes still red from crying. I can't do this, Maddie, she whispered. I hate him for putting me in this position. That conversation with Arlette gave me an idea. I spent the next week finalizing consulting deals with 3 more of Hector's key suppliers. Each contract was structured the same way. They'd work with me directly for logistics optimization, which meant Hector would lose access to their best services. I was careful to time everything perfectly. Hector had just sent out invitations for a massive investor showcase in 4 weeks. He was planning to use the event to announce major expansion plans and secure another round of funding. The timing couldn't be better. I scheduled my official resignation for 2 weeks before the showcase, just enough time for the chaos to build, but not enough time for him to fix it. I also reached out to Marcus Webb at Megacorp again. I'm ready to discuss that partnership, I told him, but I have a specific timeline in mind. What did you have in mind? He asked. I want to announce our consulting partnership at the same time Hector is hosting his investor showcase, I said. I think the timing would be educational. Marcus laughed. I like the way you think, Maddie. Consider it done. I decided to play one final card before making my exit. I told Hector I'd stay through the investor showcase to ensure a smooth transition for Arlette. That's very professional of you, Maddie, he said with that fake gratitude I'd learned to hate. I knew you'd do the right thing in the end. The right thing. Like giving my job to his unqualified fiancée was somehow the moral choice. I just want to make sure everything goes smoothly, I replied. This showcase is important for the company. Hector nodded eagerly. Exactly. We're going to show investors that we're ready for massive growth. With Arlette running operations and you providing consulting support, we'll be unstoppable. I almost felt sorry for him. He was so confident in his plan, so sure that everything would work out. He had no idea that his entire supply chain was about to collapse. That evening I got the confirmation email I'd been waiting for. Marcus Webb's assistant wrote, Partnership announcement approved for the showcase date. Press release ready for distribution. I read the email twice, then closed my laptop with a smile. 4 weeks until the showcase. 4 weeks until Hector learned what it really meant to lose everything. A week after my conversation with Hector, Arlette surprised me by asking if we could have coffee together. We met at a small cafe downtown, away from the office. I need to tell you something, she said, stirring her latte nervously. This whole operations job, it wasn't my idea. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I was fascinated. What do you mean? Hector said it would look good for investors if we had a woman in leadership, she admitted. He said it would show we're progressive and modern, but I never wanted this responsibility. The pieces clicked together. Hector hadn't just betrayed me. He'd used Arlette as a prop to improve his company's image. She was as much a victim as I was, just in a different way. I feel like such a fraud, she continued. Everyone expects me to know what I'm doing, but I'm just making it up as I go along. She looked up at me with tears in her eyes. You must hate me. The honest answer was complicated. I was furious about losing my job, but seeing her struggle made me realize she was trapped too. Then she said something that changed everything. He was planning to fire you completely, but I convinced him to keep you as a consultant. I knew the suppliers would leave if you disappeared entirely. Back at the office, Hector's problems were multiplying faster than he could solve them. 2 suppliers had mysteriously started offering better rates to competitors. A third was suddenly too busy to prioritize his orders. What Hector didn't know was that these suppliers were now working with me through my consulting contracts. They were still fulfilling their obligations to his company, but they weren't going above and beyond anymore. No rush orders, no special accommodations, no flexibility when things went wrong. "Maddie, I need you to work some magic," Hector said, cornering me by the coffee machine. "Our suppliers seem different lately, less responsive." I feigned concern. "Really? That's strange. Maybe they're just busy with other clients. Can you reach out to them? See what's going on?" His desperation was showing. "You've always been good with supplier relationships." "Of course," I agreed. "I'll make some calls." I did make calls, to thank my new clients for their business and to discuss expanding our partnerships. Meanwhile, Hector's company continued struggling with delayed shipments and higher costs. That afternoon, he sent me an email with the subject line, "Urgent. Need your help." Inside was a panicked message about supply chain issues threatening the investor showcase. I stared at the screen and whispered, "Checkmate." Hector's desperation reached new levels when he called me into his office for what he called emergency strategic planning. He looked like he hadn't slept in days. "Maddie, I need your expertise. We have to nail this investor showcase, and I'm worried about our delivery commitments." He pulled up a spreadsheet showing the aggressive timeline he'd promised potential investors. I studied the numbers carefully. He was planning to demonstrate the company's capabilities by fulfilling a massive rush order during the showcase week, live proof that they could handle enterprise-level demand. "This timeline is ambitious," I said slowly. "Are you sure the suppliers can handle this volume?" "That's what I need you to figure out," he said. "Work your magic. Call in favors, do whatever it takes." I nodded thoughtfully. "I think I can make this work, but you'll need to commit to some premium pricing with the suppliers. Rush orders always cost more." "How much more?" he asked. I did some quick calculations, knowing exactly which suppliers would be unavailable to him. "Probably triple the normal rates, but it'll guarantee delivery." Hector winced but nodded. "Do it. We need this showcase to be perfect." I walked out of his office knowing I just convinced him to overcommit to an impossible deadline at premium prices. The perfect final trap. The tension between Hector and Arlette reached a breaking point 2 days later. I was working at my desk when their argument erupted in his office, loud enough for the entire floor to hear. "This was never my idea," Arlette shouted. "You pushed me into this job, and now you're blaming me for everything that goes wrong." "You're head of operations," Hector yelled back. "It's your job to make things work." I never wanted to be head of operations. I wanted to help with marketing, not manage supply chains. Her voice was breaking. "You put me here because it looked good, not because I could do the job." The entire office had gone silent. Everyone was pretending to work while listening to their relationship implode. I actually felt sorry for both of them. Hector was about to lose everything, and Arlette was discovering that the man she loved had used her. "Don't blame me for your incompetence," Hector snapped. "Maddie managed just fine. Maddie has 10 years of experience. I have 10 minutes. Arlette shot back. The fight ended with Arlette storming out of the office, tears streaming down her face. She walked right past my desk without looking at anyone. My last day was tomorrow. The timing couldn't be more perfect. I spent my final morning at the company cleaning out my desk and transferring files. The office atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew about yesterday's fight, and rumors were flying about what it meant for the upcoming showcase. At noon, I gathered the entire staff in the main conference room. Hector and Arlette sat at opposite ends of the table, not making eye contact. "I wanted to thank everyone for the amazing years we've had together," I began. "I'm proud of what we've built, and I know you'll continue to do great things." Hector forced a smile. "We're really gonna miss you, Maddie, but I'm confident we'll be fine without you." His tone was casual, dismissive, like my departure was just a minor personnel change. I smiled back. "I'm sure you will be." The words carried a weight he couldn't understand yet. After brief goodbyes, I walked to my car with a small box of personal items. As I sat behind the wheel, my phone buzzed with a text message. "Partnership announcement approved for broadcast during the showcase. Thanks for the inside timeline, Marcus." I looked back at the office building one last time, then drove away without a second thought. The domino effect started exactly 1 week after my departure. Thompson Farms was the first to formally notify Hector that they were ending their exclusivity agreement. They cited strategic realignment and new partnership opportunities. By Wednesday, Pacific Logistics had pulled out of their rush delivery contract, claiming they were overbooked with existing clients. By Friday, Midwest Transport had done the same. Hector was hemorrhaging money trying to find replacement suppliers who could handle the showcase timeline. The companies willing to take rush orders were charging exactly what I'd predicted, triple the normal rates, and most couldn't guarantee delivery. I heard through industry contacts that Hector was burning through his emergency funding just to keep regular operations running. The premium showcase order was looking impossible. My phone buzzed with a notification. An email from Hector. "Maddie, I know we didn't part on the best terms, but I need to ask a favor. Can we talk? This is important for everyone who still works here." I stared at the message for a long moment, then marked it as read without responding. He'd made his choice when he humiliated me in that investor meeting. Now he could live with the consequences. The night before the investor showcase, I was having dinner with Marcus Webb and the Megacorp leadership team. We were making final preparations for our partnership announcement, scheduled to go live just as Hector's presentation began. "Are you sure about the timing?" Marcus asked. "We could announce a day later if you prefer." I sipped my wine and considered it. "No, I think the timing is perfect. The industry should see what real logistics leadership looks like." My phone rang. Hector's assistant, Tracy. I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. "Maddie, please don't hang up," Tracy said quickly. "I know this is awkward, but Hector is in complete panic mode. The showcase is tomorrow and nothing is ready. The supplier's canceled, the inventory is wrong, and the investors are expecting a live demonstration." "That sounds stressful," I replied calmly. "He's asking, no begging, for you to help. Just for tomorrow. He says he'll pay you whatever you want." Tracy's voice was desperate. "Please, Maddie, everyone's jobs are on the line." I felt a pang of sympathy for Tracy and the other employees, but they'd all watched Hector humiliate me without saying a word. "I'm sorry, Tracy. I don't clean up other people's messes anymore." I hung up and returned to my dinner conversation. The investor showcase was held at the Grand Plaza Hotel downtown. I sat in the back of the auditorium, dressed professionally but quietly. Most people didn't recognize me. I'd always preferred to work behind the scenes. Hector took the stage looking confident, but I could see the stress in his shoulders. He launched into his presentation about revolutionary growth and industry-leading efficiency. The slides looked impressive, full of charts and projections. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said, building to his crescendo, "let me show you our capabilities in real time." That's when Marcus Webb stood up in the front row. "Before you continue, Hector, I think the investors should know about some recent industry developments." Hector's face went pale. "I'm sorry, what?" Marcus gestured to the AV team, who switched to a new presentation. "Megacorp Industries is pleased to announce our new strategic consulting partnership with Maddie Patterson, former architect of the supply chain systems you've been discussing." The room erupted in murmurs. Investors turned to look at each other, then started looking around the room. A few spotted me in the back. "We'll be working exclusively with Thompson Farms, Pacific Logistics, and Midwest Transport," Marcus continued, providing them with cutting-edge optimization services. Those were Hector's three biggest suppliers, the ones he'd been counting on for his demonstration. Hector tried to salvage his presentation, but the damage was done. When he clicked to his next slide, showing partnership agreements with suppliers who had just announced they were working with his biggest competitor, the irony was impossible to ignore. "We have other suppliers," he stammered, but his voice lacked conviction. Several investors were already checking their phones, probably researching Megacorp's announcement. Arlette, who had been sitting in the front row, suddenly stood up and walked out. Her movement caught everyone's attention, and a few more people started heading for the exits. "Our growth projections remain strong," Hector continued, but he was talking to a half-empty room. His slides showed delivery commitments that everyone now knew he couldn't meet. When he finally finished, the applause was polite but brief. During the networking reception afterward, I watched investors cluster around Marcus instead of Hector. Hector stood alone by the bar, staring at his phone. At one point, he looked up and spotted me across the room. Our eyes met for just a moment. I saw desperation there, and something that might have been an apology. He mouthed a single word: "Please." I turned away and continued my conversation with a potential new client. That evening, my phone rang just as I was settling into my new apartment. I'd moved to a place with a view of the city, symbolic of my fresh start. The caller ID showed Hector's name. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me answer. "Maddie." His voice was broken, defeated. "I know I don't deserve this, but I need to ask for your help one more time." "I'm listening," I said, though I already knew my answer. "I'll give you anything. Part ownership of the company, your old job back with a huge raise, complete control over operations." He was talking fast, desperately. "Just help me fix this, please." I walked to my floor-to-ceiling windows and looked out over the city lights. Somewhere down there, people were working late, building their dreams, fighting for their futures. I'd been one of them once. "Hector," I said softly, "I spent 2 years building something beautiful for you. You gave it away to make yourself look good. Then you tried to steal credit for my work. I know. I made terrible mistakes, but we can fix this together." "No," I said firmly. "I don't clean up other people's messes anymore. Good luck, Hector." I hung up the phone and turned back to my laptop, where I was reviewing contracts for 3 new clients. My consulting firm was already growing beyond my expectations. I smiled, not because Hector had lost, but because I'd finally chosen myself.